All right, so greeting and welcome everyone. Just a few words before we begin with the recitation. We're talking about practicing Dharma. So we have the Buddhist Dharma. And it is important to know what we really mean when we say, I practice Dharma, because this is a very common expression, like I practice Dharma, I must practice Dharma, and so forth. So what does that mean? It actually means that when we practice Dharma, we modify our conduct and our behavior. And our conduct here refers to our activities of our body, speech, and mind. So when we say we modify it, ideally we wanted to change, and we wanted to change for the better. We wanted to improve. If our conduct improves, then we can say that we practice Dharma. If our conduct and our behavior, instead of improving, remains unchanged, or even worse, it goes backwards and it becomes worse and worse, then even though we might say that I'm practicing Dharma, in reality, we are not practicing this. So here when we use the term Dharma, the word Dharma or Che in Tibetan has many explanations. Right. One of the explanations, it means, has the meaning of change. So when you say I practice Dharma, it means I bring about change, right? Another explanation of the word Dharma, the strict interpretation of the word for Dharma, of the word for phenomena, is that which retains its own nature, its own identity. So to retain your nature, to retain your identity here in this context, it means that you can recognize your nature. For example, you engage a conduct of making offerings to the deities and so forth. That is recognizing and retaining your nature. And it comes down to modifying your conduct, improving your conduct so that you can benefit others. And if you cannot directly benefit others, at least you will not harm others. Obviously, to be able to actually benefit others, it's the ideal situation. But even if you cannot do that, at least you should avoid harming, repressing others, causing anxiety to others, causing mental problems to others, and so forth. There is this, there is this explanation that is mentioned in Abhidharma. So it gives the example of a king, and the king is someone who is very oppressive. He demands high taxes, and he makes the people work very hard. And in return, he doesn't give much benefit. So the people are languishing and suffering under this king. Somehow there is a change, and there's a new king that comes in. And this new king actually is not so demanding and so oppressive. So he's not imposing very heavy taxes, and he doesn't make the people work from night to day. And the people under this new king, they are much happier, and they say, oh, how fortunate we are. We have such a good king. So they say we have such a good king, although the king has not directly done something to benefit them, but at least the king is not oppressing them with heavy taxes, making them, anxious and, worry about their finances and so forth. So it is like this. Even if we're not able to directly benefit others, at least we should not cause worry and anxiety and harm to others. We should not mentally disturb others. Actually, the fact that we do not cause harm to others is a very good sign that we have mastered and we have disciplined our own mind. Okay, so with all this understanding about how we practice Dharma and what it means to actually practice Dharma, we should set our motivation as we recite the 100 deities of Tushita Gandhi Lagema. Okay, so we just really to link or to remind ourselves where we are, at which point of the text we have reached. We are looking at the subject, which is the proper way to rely on the spiritual master. And the proper way to rely on the spiritual master is to be able to see him as being a real Buddha. The reason why we do that is because there is actually benefit. We gain, we have benefit if we see him as the Buddha, and we don't lose at all if we see him as the Buddha. And therefore, this is the reason why we should see him as the real Buddha. The question that arises after that is whether or not we are capable of seeing him as the Buddha. Because if we're not capable of seeing him, even though it says we must see him, it will all be in vain. There will be no benefit. However, we are indeed capable of seeing him as being the real Buddha. So what does it mean to see the Guru as the real Buddha? It means to generate the particular faith that sees him as, recognizes him as the Buddha. There are different types of faith, but here we're talking about the specific faith that believes that the Guru is the Buddha. Without this particular faith, we will not be able to attain the Supreme Siddhi. We might be able to gain some minor, small siddhis along the way, but we will not be able to reach the Supreme Siddhi. Supreme Siddhi here refers to reaching the ultimate goal, which is full enlightenment. We will not be able to reach a state of full enlightenment because we will not be able, first of all, to obtain or to establish our own purpose. And we won't be able to establish our own purpose because we will still have knowledge obscurations. And secondly, we will not be able to establish universally the purpose of others. So universally here means without partiality, it means including everyone, and therefore being able to establish the purpose of everyone, every sentient being. This actually is a unique quality that only the Buddha has. There are many incredible arhats out there, however, they don't have the capacity to bring about the benefit, to establish the purpose and the benefit of all sentient beings. Okay, so having understood the reason, the necessity for that, the fact that we are capable of doing this, what type of faith it involves, then we relied upon scripture and logic in order to establish that the Guru is actually the Buddha. So last week we were looking at this particular logic or reasoning that says that he is the Buddha because the Guru is the agent who carries out all the enlightened activities of the Buddhas. So we examined this last week, and today we will continue looking into a new type of reasoning, another logical proof for that. So as you can see, we have done a quick sort of like a revision of whatever we have covered so far. Okay, so if we look at the outline, it's outline number 90 in page 245. It says, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are still working for the sake of sentient beings. So this is going to become another logical argument that will prove that the Guru is indeed the Buddha. So let's see how these words establish that the Guru is the Buddha. So it says, Vajradhara emanates himself at present and definitely works for the sake of all beings. So it says Buddha Vajradhara actually sends out emanations. He continuously emanates himself. And he says he emanates himself at the present time, and works for the sake of all beings. The Buddhas unmistakably know the situation of all sentient beings. So now with this sentence, it begins talking about the qualities of the Buddhas. One of the first qualities that is mentioned here is the quality of knowledge, of comprehension. So the Buddhas have unmistaken knowledge of the situation of all beings. That means they understand exactly the situation of each and every sentient being without mixing, without becoming confused, without missing any details or anything like that. If we compare our knowledge or our comprehension of various situations, we can see that our mental capacity and our knowledge is very much inferior. You know, things that happened, let's say, last year or a year before last, most of those things we have forgotten. And whatever little we remember from these events is all kind of like mixed up and blurred. Even things that we say right now, you know, in an hour's time, we have forgotten half of the conversation, half of what we said or what other people said. But the Buddhas are not like this. As it says here, they have unmistaken knowledge of everything that happens to every sentient being. So this is one of their qualities. And then it says, they love them even more than a mother loves her only child. So this is the second quality. It's the quality of affection of the Buddhas. And they say they have love and affection for sentient beings that surpasses that of a mother for a single child. And then it says, without interruption, do their utmost to carry out good works. So this affection they have is a continuous affection. It's not an affection that it can be present under certain conditions, then they withdraw their affection, it stops, and then it starts again, and something like that. No, they are constantly and continuously motivated by this affection. And motivated by this affection, they do their utmost, which means they do their best, the absolute best that they can, to carry out good works. So again, this term that is translated here as good works is the term for enlightened activity that refers to the qualities of the Buddhas. So it says they constantly carry out enlightened activities. In other words, they give us, or they make sure that we receive the qualities of the Buddhas. And then it says, how could they not be similarly working for our sake in the present times? So all the Buddhas have done this in the past. And why should we have any doubt that they're not doing the same presently? So how could we have any doubt that the Buddhas send out emanations, and these emanations are completely full with perfect knowledge and with continuous affection, and they constantly work for the benefit, to benefit us in terms of developing the qualities of the Buddha. So we should have no doubt that just as all the Buddhas in the past have done so, they are currently also doing the same thing. Therefore, we could not possibly say that my guru is not the Buddha. Quite the opposite. We can actually, go now into the heading where it says, the Buddhas are still working for the sake of sentient beings. And that actually proves that here it is, the Buddhas are still working for the sake of sentient beings. They send out emanations, and those emanations, what do? They come here and they teach us. So we're talking about our gurus, our virtuous friends, our teachers who teach us. They are the Buddhas who are still working for the sake of sentient beings. So this is how it becomes the logic that proves it. Okay, so it says, ever since the Buddhas first developed bodhicitta, they have worked solely for our sakes. So now he's going to describe this process of becoming enlightened and explain that in each phase, they are always, whatever they did it for the sake of all sentient beings, for our sake. So it says, even from the beginning, when they generated the mind of bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, so bodhisattva on the first ground, when they generate that mind of enlightenment, they do it for our sake. And at that point, they make the promise, and they say, I promise to work for the benefit of sentient beings. They also build up their two accumulations for our sakes. So having generated the mind of bodhicitta, they have to spend quite a long period of time to traverse from the first to the 10th ground, and during that time they're building up their accumulations. So they're doing all those practices for purification and for accumulation. So all this heavy lifting in terms of practice is done for our sake. And then they even became enlightened for the sake of sentient beings. So even when they reach the final state, the resultant state, they do that for the sake of sentient beings. Now that they have achieved the result, it will be impossible for them not to continue benefiting us. So basically he's asking this question, and he says, from the very beginning, they made all this effort to generate the mind of bodhicitta in order to benefit us, in order to help us, right? Right. Then they spent all this time doing the practices for purification and accumulation. And all of that was for our sake, right? Right. And now that they have reached the state of enlightenment, somehow they're going to give it all up, give us up, and say, who cares about those sentient beings who are suffering? You know, I became enlightened, and I'm not going to help them, or I'm going to benefit them. Would that ever be possible? If actually they did that, you know, all the previous promises that they made when they generate the mind of bodhicitta, and all those things that they said, you know, that I'm doing this purification, I'm doing this practice, I'm building up my accumulation in order to be able to benefit sentient beings, all of this will become like a big elaborate lie. So would actually the Buddhas do that once they reach the state of enlightenment? As it says here, it would be impossible for them not to continue benefit us. They did that from the very beginning. They did it during the time of their training. So now that they have reached the result, they will also continue to do that. All the Buddhas would not be so callous as to abandon us by not working for our sakes. So this expression, they would be callous. To be callous means to be extremely rude, extremely bad. So it says here, would it be possible that the Buddhas would actually be so bad that they would abandon us? And no, the answer to that, no, that will be impossible. They still continue to work for our sake. They work for our sake. Everything they have done from the very beginning is for our sake. So it is inconceivable. It is impossible. It will be the worst of bad manners. They would not be so callous as to completely abandon us when they reach the state of perfection. So as you can see, he's going through this process of elimination. He has a logic that he's following, and he is sort of like blocking any possibility of saying, oh yeah, maybe perhaps they would abandon us at this point, or they would abandon us at that point. So he's negating, he's blocking all this. So at the end, there's only one way to drive this argument. And this only one way to drive the argument is the next sentence, so where it says, they most surely are benefiting us. So most surely means with certainty. It means you should have no doubt. There can be no other way than this. It's not possible that they abandon us now at this stage, and therefore they are continuing to benefit us. They continue to benefit us in what way? By teaching us. They emanate, they come, and they teach us. Vajradhara himself had said that I will come, I will manifest in the aspect of the teacher, in the aspect of the abbot, and so forth. Is Vajradhara lying? Are all these Buddhas, with all the promises they have made, are lying to us? Are they trying to fool us? Was it all an elaborate hoax? No, it cannot be this way. And because it cannot be this way, the only alternative that is left is that they are here, They continue to benefit us, and how they benefit us is by teaching us. So then it says, if all the Buddhas definitely benefit us, so we have established that much, there is no other way for them to do it but as follows. So he's going to give a quotation that explains how do they actually benefit us. The great ones do not wash away sin with water. They do not rid beings of suffering with their hands. They do not transfer realizations of suchness into others. They liberate by teaching the truth of suchness. Okay, so we going to go line by line. So it says the great ones, so it's referring to the Buddhas, they do not wash away sin or negativity with water. So it is like this, we have negativity, so how are they going to benefit us? Is it possible to somehow, wash it away, like pour some water on us and everything will be purified and removed? They don't do it this way. Then it says they do not rid beings of suffering with their hands. Although they see the suffering of sentient beings, it is not possible that they will physically reach out with their hand and remove that suffering. If you have a physical object, you can reach with your hand, you can take it, and you can remove it. The same way that, let's say, you remove rubbish and you take it out of here and you throw it in the dustbin. But our suffering cannot be removed in this way. This is not how the Buddhas act. The next line, it says, they do not transfer realizations of suchness into others. So it is not like the case of having empty containers. They are full of realization, like a container that is full of water, and then they're taking water from the full container and they say, oh, let me pour a bit here and a bit there and a bit there, so we all have, equal amount of water in our containers. So it says they cannot transfer realizations in this way. So then how do they benefit us? How do they act on their behalf? It says they liberate by teaching the truth of suchness. So there is emphasis here. What they do is they will teach the meaning of emptiness. And what happens after they teach the meaning of emptiness? We're not sitting there saying, oh, Lama, please help me. Oh, Lama, you know everything. You take care of me. They have taught the meaning of emptiness. So now we have to take those teachings and we have to put it into practice. By doing the practice, we will generate the realization within our own mind stream. And once we generate this realization of emptiness, we will complete the path and we will become Buddhas ourselves. So this is how it helps us. It says they liberate by teaching the meaning of emptiness. They liberate sentient beings from samsara, because what keeps us within samsara is the ignorance that we have in terms of emptiness. So they come. How do they help us ultimately? They come, they teach us emptiness, and then it's up to us to take on this as our practice, generate the realization, and liberate ourselves through those teachings of emptiness. So this is the process. This is how they help us. So there is this line here, it says that the great ones do not wash sin away with water. Negativity cannot be removed with some, let's say, ritual or some washing or bathing ceremony or something like this. You have to understand that you must make the effort from your own side. And of course you will receive the assistance of your guru, but you must make the effort from your side in order to remove your own negativity. So there is this story to illustrate that. The previous Trijang Dorje Chang was visiting a particular place, and there was a man there who approached Rinpoche and he said, oh, precious Lama, precious Rinpoche, please do not throw me into the hells. And Trijang Dorje Chang replied, well, I cannot throw you there, I cannot take you there, make sure you don't take yourself into the hells. So very clearly, what he's indicating with this response is that, Of course, the Lama could have a lot of power. Obviously, the Buddhas have all the power, but they are not the ones that will carry you upwards, or they will throw you downwards into the lower migrations or the hells and so forth. Where you go depends completely upon yourself. You have to study the Dharma, you have to understand the Dharma, and then accordingly you have to practice, and by making the effort yourself, you will purify your negativity and you will build up your accumulation. This is what protects you from going to the hells. This is what allows you to go to a better place. It's not that the guru is going to pull you up or throw you deep down into the hells. There are people who say, you know, oh, I have such a good guru, I have nothing to worry about. It's not like that. So after the quotation it says, emanations of the Buddhas are doing this. So again there is emphasis, you know, who is the agent who is carrying out these activities? It is the emanations of the Buddha. There is no one else to teach the means of high rebirth and definite excellence, the supreme benefits. So let's explain these two terms first. So first of all, we're talking about higher rebirth, and higher rebirth refers to rebirth as a human or God. That is, let's say, an immediate benefit. It's immediate benefit because you haven't reached the ultimate purpose or the ultimate goal, which is enlightenment. However, if you were to fall into any of the lower migrations, that will be almost the end of the story. Right? In order to progress properly along the path, you need to obtain a rebirth as a human or a god. On the basis of this type of existence, you can take vows. So you can take vows of individual liberation, bodhisattva vows, tantric vows. In particular, the human form, the human body, is the excellent basis for assuming all of those vows. So establishing higher rebirth definitely is a very useful goal for the time being. And then we have the other term, which is definite excellence. Definite excellence refers to liberation and enlightenment. So as you can see, it's referring to the supreme or the final benefit, the ultimate goal. So in order to reach the ultimate goal, you must guarantee that you have a higher rebirth. And it says here, there is no one else to teach the method, the mean for obtaining either those immediate benefits of the higher rebirth or the ultimate benefits of liberation and enlightenment. So it says there's no one else. It means we have logically excluded every other possibility. Don't expect the Buddha himself to come and teach you those things. You're going to have to deal with an emanation of the Buddha. And it is actually the emanation of the Buddha appears to you as your teacher. He is the one who will come and teach you the means for higher rebirth and definite excellence. Then it says, in the prayer of Kensang Jamyang, we find the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the past still work for the sake of beings. So where it says still, it means these days, at present, they continue to work for the sake of sentient beings. Know that this is not merely an assertion. So not merely an assertion, it means that it's not just something that we accept. It is like this in reality. This is the truth. Right? So Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are currently working for the sake of sentient beings. It holds true for qualified gurus. So as you see, you know, the conclusion, we're following this logic here. So it says, you understand that Buddhas and Bodhisattvas presently, they continue, as they did in the past, they continue to work for the sake of sentient beings. We're not just saying this, but this is the reality. And this is true for your qualified gurus, meaning your gurus are the actual emanations of the Buddhas who are working for you at the present time. And then it concludes by saying, my own guru said, so this is Pabongka Rinpoche now talking about what his own guru has said to him. There is a complete Buddha sitting on the head of every sentient being. So when it says here there is a Buddha sitting on the head of every sentient being, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to visualize that you have like a Buddha statue or the image of a Buddha on the crown of your head. When it says here on the head, it means they are above us in the sense that they guide us. They are above us and they guide us by teaching us. So he's referring to the Lama, our precious root guru, who is guiding us, because our guru is actually the representative of all the activities of body, speech, and mind of every Buddha. So as the representative of all the activities of the Buddhas, representative of all the Buddhas, he's the one who guides us and teaches us. So this saying that says there's a Buddha on top of the head of every sentient being, it means there's someone who is guiding every sentient being, and that person is the guru. So it is like this. You know, there might be some people who say, I want to search for the Buddha. I will go high and low. I will go far as it takes, as long as it takes. I want to go out on a quest, try to find the Buddha. You will never find the Buddha. It doesn't matter how far the distance you cover. You cannot find the Buddha. You cannot meet the Buddha. All you will meet is the Guru, the Lama, because he is the emanation of the Buddha. If you look at the example of Master Atisha, he traveled to Sri Lanka looking for the Guru, seeking for the Guru. And there he found his Guru, Lama Serlimpa. And when he met Lama Serlimpa, he saw him as the Buddha. He had the faith that he was the actual Buddha. But other than that, Lama Serlimpa appeared in the aspect, you know, of an ordinary teacher. He was a human being. He was doing ordinary things such as eating food and so forth every day. So when Geshe-la was saying, you know, the way that I understand it is that it doesn't matter how far you go. You can ride your horse for many days. You can get a ticket in your aeroplane. You can travel to another continent. You can go as far as you like. But there is no other Buddha to be found other than your Guru. That's it. He is the Buddha. And this is what we have to prove to ourselves. So when you say, I'm looking for the Buddha or I have found the Buddha, you have to go through this logic reasoning that actually proves and establishes within your mind the fact that the Guru is the Buddha. This is how you have to see him. This is the type of faith that you have to generate for him. So there's no other way to go. There's no other avenue here. Okay, so we continue with the next outline. You cannot be sure of appearances. Again, this is logic that will prove that the Guru is Buddha. It says, you must assert that your present Gurus are actually Buddhas and are the agents of all the Buddha's good works. Okay, so this is the point we are working, you know, on, that the Gurus are emanations of the Buddhas and that they are the agents who carry out the enlightened activities of all the Buddhas. But still, you do not see your Gurus as Buddhas. So we have been going through this argument and giving quotations and giving reasoning, but still we cannot see him as the Buddha. Still we say, you know, what do you mean I have to see him as the Buddha? Look at him, he's ordinary, he's doing this, he's doing that, he has this fault, he has that fault. It is due to our karma and obscurations, or karmic obscurations, that actually we perceive the Guru as being ordinary and as having many faults. You claim, I see them as ordinary beings because I see this and that faulty aspect in them. So let us analyze this. So someone says, look, I cannot see him as a Buddha. Why? Because I see him as an ordinary being. I see him as an ordinary being because I observe this fault and that fault and the other fault. Okay, so now we're going to analyze if what we see, what we perceive is actually valid or not. So it says, what we see is untrustworthy, and uncertain. So untrustworthy, it means something you cannot rely upon. You cannot trust what you see. And uncertain, it means it is not certain. It means it is not for sure. In other words, it means you don't see it right. You don't see it properly. You don't see it exactly as it is. So you cannot be certain of what you are seeing. Our perspective follows from our karma. So whatever appearances we have is the result that is induced due to our karma. We cannot determine whether we have acquired certain types of karma and not others. And we cannot tell whether we have one karma and not another, because we see things in such a way. So what he's saying with this sentence is that basically we cannot say that I have this karma, but I don't have this other karma. It is much more suitable in our case to say I have every karma, meaning I have created every karmic obscuration. And why it is preferable to say that, to admit that from the beginning, it is because we have taken life after life. We have been around in samsara. So that means we had countless lifetimes. And in all these countless lifetimes, we have accumulated this and that and the other karma. Because we're talking about countless lifetimes, there is not one type of karma that we can say for sure, oh, you know, I haven't got this one. So it's safe to assume we have every type of karmic obscuration. We have it all. And then according to our karmic obscurations, we are going to see different things that are not in reality how they are. Okay, so he is going to support this through scriptural authority. So it says here, Chandrakiri says in his Engaging in the Middle Way, a hungry ghost thinks a running river is pass. He thinks it's pass. All right. So there is a particular section in Engaging the Middle Way, Entering the Middle Way, where there is like this debate about a container that has a liquid. And we have three different types of sentient beings. One is a god, the other one is a human, and the other one is a hungry ghost. The liquid is the same, but according to their karma, these three different beings are going to perceive it as something different. The god looks at this container and all they see is nectar. It appears as nectar to the god. The human looks at it and it appears like ordinary water. Okay, there's water in it. The hungry ghost looks at it, and the liquid there appears to be like blood and pus and, you know, those unclean substances. So it says here, that is when three different types of karmic beings. So karmic beings are beings who have different karmas, right? They have karma. A god, a human, and a hungry ghost see a bowl of thirst-quenching liquid. One of them sees nectar, so the god sees nectar. One sees water, that is the human, and one sees pus and blood. So this is the hungry ghost. And then it continues. To hungry ghosts, the moon in summer seems hot. Okay, so in the summer, in the evening when the moon comes out, usually the rays of the moon are considered to be cooling. For us, we perceive it to be cooling. But because of their karmic obscuration, for the hungry ghost, the rays of the moonlight are actually burning their body. So for them, it's very hot. And the winter sun is cold. For us, when the sun comes out in winter, it warms us up, isn't it? So for us, the sun is warm. But for them, it is already winter, they're already cold, and then the sun comes out, and the sun makes things even colder. So all of these things are due to their karma. Then it says, the Kalachakra Tantra and the Abhidharma cosmology were formulated for two types of disciples. In one teaching, Mount Meru is described as being round. So in the Kalachakra, it describes Mount Meru as being round. And in the other, which is the Abhidharma, Mount Meru is described to be square, and so forth. So in the so forth, we have to include here the current scientific views. So in the past, the Earth was described to be flat, right? But these days, the scientists, describe the Earth as being a globe. So we have different views according to our karma, and this is how we perceive things. It continues with other examples to establish that what we see is mistaken, right? So it says, Arya Asanga saw the Venerable Maitreya as a beach with paralyzed hind legs and infested with worms. So we know this story with Asanga and Maitreya, where he could just see a dog there. Buddha Jnana saw Acharya Manjushri Mitra as a monk who lived with a woman, plowed a field, and ate soup made of worms. So obviously he saw his guru as a very ordinary, even, low being. All the local people thought Tilopa was just a fisherman. Again, we know the story of Tilopa. They never suspected he was a great adept. They just thought he's just an ordinary fisherman, very plain person. He has no realizations. And even Naropa, so Naropa was the main disciple, Tilopa was his guru. He saw him grilling live fish. Krishnacharya saw Vajravarahi as a leper woman. Vajravarahi was his main yidam, but the way that he perceived her was like a leper woman whose hand was deformed because, the muscles are eaten up and they contract when you have leprosy, so the hands and the limbs become deformed. So this is how he saw Vajravarahi. So all of these are examples that illustrate that what we see is dependent upon our karma, and therefore it's not something that we can trust, and it's not something which is accurate. So it says, we should be glad our spiritual guide does not appear to us as a horse, a dog, or a donkey. We see him as a human being. So when it says we should be glad, we should rejoice. It's a great merit that given our karmic obscurations, we are still able to see the guru as a human being, right? We have so much negative karma piled up, accumulated, that perhaps we would see him as a dog or as a donkey or as an animal. Instead, we can still see him as a human. And seeing him as a human, we can observe this mistake and that mistake. Chengawa Lodro Gyaltsen said, considering our great measure of evil karma and resulting obscurations, we can draw consolation from our seeing the Guru as human. So when it says we can draw consolation, it means it is excellent. We should rejoice. We should be very glad. This is great merit that we can still see him as a human. We have great merit not to see him as a dog or a donkey. Pay him reverence from your heart, O child of Shakyamuni. So have respect for him, have faith for him, have reverence from the bottom of your heart. Okay, so what this section here establishes is that our appearances are something that we should not trust. They are uncertain and they are unworthy to be trusted. And why is that? Because the appearances that we have are reduced from our karma and our merit. So the more karma we have, the more merit we have, the better the picture that we will see. The more obscurations, the more negativity we have, the more karmic burden that we have, the worse the picture that will appear into our eyes. So the Buddhas have a body that is beautified with all the marks and signs. However, this is not something that we can perceive. Right? The only thing that we can see, we cannot see this magnificent form of the Buddha. The way that we can perceive the Buddha is in the aspect of the human. We can only see him in that ordinary aspect. Why? Due to the faults, the negativities, and the obscurations that we have. If we purify those things, then we can develop what is called the pure vision. When we purify the negativity, we will be able to see more beauty. We will be able to see something which is more refined, more elevated. But until we purify all that, we will just have that measure of appearances. And as it says here, we should be glad that we don't see him, does not appear to us as some form of an animal. In the text, it goes through all these examples of great practitioners. We had Naropa, Krishnacharya, and so on and so forth, Buddha Jnana, and so forth, Master Asanga. When they saw the yidam or the teacher, even they saw the teacher as being an ordinary being, right? Or even an animal, and so forth. So if that was the case with them, why do you think this will not be the case with us, with all the karmic obscurations that we have? So we have to come to understand that according to our karma, this is our lot. This is our fortune. This is how far we go. We don't have the power to see any more than this. We don't have the capacity to see any better than this. This is how far it goes due to our karma. So we have to accept that we cannot see the Buddha in that magnificent pure form. We can only see the Buddha as a human. Why? Because this is our fortune according to our karma. So we have to settle that issue that we have impure vision. And there are so many examples here to illustrate this. So there's quite a lot to say about impure vision, about appearances that are not worthy to trust, appearances that are induced due to karma and merit. But we have run out of time. So that's a discussion we will have in the future. So we stop here and we dedicate.
Janjo semjo Rinpoche maje panamaje yoje Kyawa nyamba meba yang Kone kondo pewa jo Janjo semjo Rinpoche